Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Seattle Angel Workshop Series. We're working on the question of how to get startups to be more effective and how to get more angel investors. Along those lines, we regularly have this conversation about the lean startup methodology and how that might change what we should be doing as a startup. And I talk about this often in the open coffees that we do every Tuesday morning. And so I thought I would um, go through that a little bit. And there's three specific stories that I want to go through. Our speaker who is going to speak tonight, Thorsten Lintz, is doing some work on AI and automation of AI around content strategy. And he was working on a project that I asked him to work on in terms of helping startups be more efficient at doing their content strategy and running the experiments that they need to run at the beginning. But I use these words. Not everybody understands what I mean when I say customer discovery, and not everybody understands what I mean by content strategy. And so I thought we'd just fill those in today and have a conversation about how that works. How many of you have done lean startup work? Everybody's done a lean startup canvas.
I have not.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics then. So this is the lean canvas, and what we mean by the process of discovery, customer discovery, might be interpreted as customer problem fit, and I'm going to dive into that in a little bit of detail. And so we're starting with this book that Steve Blanks did called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And what he articulates is at the core, the thing that makes startups have trouble is that they focus on the project and they don't focus on the customer. And really, they need to focus on the customer first. And specifically, there's 4 things you need to do before you hit the scale button, right? So they're talking about discovery, validation, creation, and company building. I say discovery, validation, creation, and scale. So we're going to hit the scale button in the 4th step. And so we're going to try and figure out what that looks like. And so we're going to run a bunch of experiments and try to learn early on so that we can focus what we're doing so we optimize our learning in the process. But customers come before product. So specifically, we're looking for customers and we're looking for the early adopters in that. We're looking for the problems and what they currently do. And that customer problem fit then allows us to learn a bunch of things that are critical. And we're going to ignore the second pass. We're going to fold up the lean canvas and just do those 2 boxes. And when we say customer, we mean somebody who will pay you, and not only someone who will pay you in a theoretical sense, but people will pay you right now. Because as a startup, your number one goal ought to be to run as fast as possible to cash flow positive. And if you don't have that as an urgent goal, then you often get yourself stranded. But we want to distinguish the happy cheerleaders from the customers that need us. And if we don't run experiments early, then we ask a bunch of happy cheerleaders about things, and they're happy to fill us up with lots of tasks that don't have anything to do with what will motivate people to buy our product. So we really want to understand who's a customer, not what is someone that would look like from an MBA point of view if we got a persona, blah, blah, blah. But really, who will pay us today for something? And I would argue that you have a dozen things that you have right now that you could sell today, which is why when folks tell me that they're a stealth startup, that I get somewhat frustrated, because the startup should be starting with a narrative, and that narrative should be driving the process of separating the potential customer from the real customer and teaching you who the subsegments are. And if you don't say anything to anyone, then you're not doing any customer development because you can't find them because they can't find you. So what our goal is then to go through the process of looking at the customers and looking at the solution, and from that customers and problem, not the solution, customer and problem. We're going to look for the early adopters. We're going to break out subsegments, and we're going to look at the existing alternatives, and we're going to interview the subsegments against the competitive matrix of things they currently do. From that, we will then find a set of features that some people like a lot and some people don't like, and some people wish were different. And from that collection of this submarket has a need that's unmet by all the existing alternatives, we can derive the unique value proposition, and from that derive a solution proposal that's unique in the market. And without this understanding at the beginning, then we get I have a customer, and now what I need to do is beat that hammer on that one thing, but we don't understand the submarkets. And because we don't understand the submarkets, we spend a lot of time in the swamp trying to learn how to effectively attract people to our problem, because we're not answering their problem, we're answering the problem of the first customer, because we think they're the ones that are the market, when in fact, maybe they're not the center of the market. So we would like you to run lean startup tests where you run these experiments, where I take a group of people that I think are common group of people who would have the same problem. And our goal is to get clarity on how to get us to 100 people that have the same problem, that are early adopters, that have paid us, right? I will call that the metric for our customer discovery has worked. 100 people who have the same problem, that are early adopters, that have paid us. And make a hypothesis, construct a test to see whether or not they're there, interview a group of people, make an offer, measure the conversion, and go through this test over and over. Maybe not 5 people, maybe it's 10, but we're running a bunch of very small, narrow tests to try to derive, oh, if I go to this place and I say this thing, then the end result is I get a reasonable conversion rate, right? So how many people do I have to talk to in order to get someone who says, yes, I'm willing to lean in on this? And if I go on the street corner and I talk to random people, then I get less than 1% conversion rate. That's not a very clear understanding of my submarket. And I go to a dentist convention and I talk to people and I get 30, 40% of the people saying, yes, that's really a problem for me. Now I found my submarket. And maybe it's not even dentists. Maybe it's a very narrow group of dentists that I'm focusing in on. And I need to understand what that looks like. But I need to run these build, measure, learn loops to learn effectively. And I need to document my learning. Just a question, how many people have run experiments where they've documented their learning? I'm seeing Connor is the active person here. All right. Let me see if I can get more of you on the screen. Cool. Nice to see you. All right. Let me go on. So what we're looking for is the early adopter. The early adopter is someone who has the problem, knows that they have the problem, has spent resources to solve the problem. That could be money, time, space, but has committed resources, still is unhappy with the solution they have, and is willing to spend money to solve the problem in a new way, right? That's somebody who is very likely to move forward. And then having found these people, we would like to make them an offer and see whether they take a step forward in some way. And we're looking at not so much the innovators, but the early adopters, the very beginning slice of the early adopters. And we would like to make an offer of some kind that would help distinguish which of these categories people are in. Are they early adopters? Are they late early adopters? Are they early majority? Are they late majority? Try to make an offer that gets people in there. One of the ways to do this is to make a product offering where you can stand in line and you could be one of the first 10 people in the pre-alpha, or you could be one of the 100 people in the pre-beta, or you could be one of the 1,000 people in the post-beta, Or you could be a retail customer, right? And you make a different priced offer and bring them in once I have a product offering to make. But I can say, I'm going to solve this problem. Where do you want to be in line? Do you want to be in the first 10? You want to be in the first 100? You want to be in the first 1,000? Some people are unwilling to engage if somebody else hasn't used it already and loves it. And some people are very happy to engage when it creates real life value for them that is somewhat exponential and gets them ahead of everybody else. And some people are willing to engage even earlier than that because it's a new thing that allows them to learn more about what they're trying to do anyway. And they're almost innovators, but not quite. The innovators are never your customer because they're building their own stuff. And so they're the ones to look at for ideas about how to put things together, but they will never be a sustainable customer base for you unless you're selling them shovels and picks for them to do the work that they're already doing, right? So you can be in a business for innovators, but that's a very different business than a business that would address the early majority, which is where the crossing the chasm is aiming you at, is to get into that early majority, which is the scale button that Min is looking for. Is how do I get to that early majority? Well, if you haven't done the work for the early adopters, it's hard to get the late early adopters, and it's really, really hard to get to the early majority folks. So we're going to have this notion of early market attractiveness. We're going to aim for doing customer problem fit and find 100 people that pay us around solving the problem. We're going to then ask them, does this solution that I've come up with meet your needs? And we're going to watch the conversion rate. Now we have real live customers who are going to tell us yes or no on the conversion rate. If we do not have like 50, 60% conversion rate, we've made a mistake somewhere and we need to go back and work on it until we get a high conversion rate. We see a lot of places where people have a business and their cost of customer acquisition is significantly higher than their margin. And as a result, they don't really have a business. They just have an expensive hobby. And they take outside money in order to buy more customers, but they never can afford to keep the customers. And it ends up dying in the end, right? Because they can't continue to get more customers because they're not making money on each customer they get. And then we move from customer problem fit to problem solution fit, which now we've validated that people want that kind of solution. And now we need to figure out in the solution customer fit, which is step 3 of this, how much they're willing to pay, what channels they use, what words they use in the channels to talk about the problem and solution, what are the motivators for each of the sub-markets, so that we can find out where we're going with that. And specifically in the sub-markets, we're trying to understand which sub-markets will convert fastest, which sub-markets will convert with the largest margin, which sub-markets will do the biggest overall market that we can get into. And I would argue that that's the order that we want to go into. We want to find first a market that's big enough, but doesn't have to be really big, to get us to cash flow positive as fast as possible. And then we want to find markets that we can upsell and create margin. And then we want to figure out how to transform ourselves to do a growth spurt into a bigger submarket. And then we'll cycle through that again, fast to cash flow positive, build margin, and then from margin, build growth, and do that over and over again as we stair step. And then once we've figured out who the customers are and what they're willing to pay and what we're willing to say in our channels, we then can look for solution channel fit, which gets us that rhythm of going. So I would ask you, as a conversation, what do you think your key metrics are in your business that you would use to say, I've hit customer problem fit? And then we'll walk through these steps. Anybody have any conversation about they want to make? Connor?
Yeah, I think for me, like absolutely retention is my number one that I'm looking for. It is a B2C business. And so what I want to be seeing is that customers are coming back using it every week because that's kind of the modality. So I want to see a number of retention that's, higher than what I see with, alternative competitors.
Sure. But retention and no margin is not a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm looking for the things that say, I now have it. So I would argue that you have in customer problem fit, the willingness of people to lean in onto the discussion and pay you for more information about the problem that you found, say, it fits, that works for me. There's no point in building a new product. Just sell that one, right? Make an affiliate deal, sell that one, take the money, right? But if there's a group of people that are solidly dissatisfied, now that ratio of satisfied to dissatisfied people starts becoming important.
Yeah, one thing that we found in our surveys is that the majority of respondents didn't have any alternative, which is at one point a concern. Is the problem big enough? But on the other hand, one thing we added in that survey was how much would you be willing to pay? One thing I regret doing is not having them able to pay right away, prepay.
Right.
And then we could have
So-
refunded the money, right? Even if we,
Right. So
just
I think
not to actually take it.
that the notion of would you, could you, should you,
Right.
willing are all words you should not use in the process of early customer discovery conversations. And more importantly, the thing that you're selling does not need to be the product. And so if you make an offer, the offer can be for a thing you can deliver today, not the product you think you're supposed to build. And so when we are attached to the solution already before we found customers, we'll call that the solution trap. And 90% of the companies coming through Seattle Angel Conference are stuck in the solution trap. They've not talked to enough customers. They don't have clarity on the customers. They have certainly no clarity on their submarkets. And they're wallowing in the swamp of customer development because they can't quite get anybody to buy this product they built, which is so great, because they haven't actually talked to anybody about what's the key feature that's important to you that causes you to spend money with me. So when we get to problem solution fit, we would like to look at the metric, the conversion metric of, yes, sign me up for, being in the alpha development, or sign me up for being in the beta development as we define, I would pay you for that solution, right? And at that point, when you get to step 2, which is customer validation, you can actually sort them out into the early adopters and the other folks in terms of where they're willing to spend their money. And then you can figure out your marketing strategy in step 3. And I would argue in step 3, the key metrics that you're looking for at the end of that are, am I at customer or problem market fit? So somewhere between step 3 and step 4, you should hit product market fit. So that means you have revenue from the product. It means that you have exponential growth in the sales for that product, which means you've hit the audience that cares, that's willing to move, and your cost of customer acquisition is bounded below your margin costs or available margin. So you're making money and you can get more customers and still make money, right? Now you're at product market fit in my mind. So, Min, are you at product market fit?
Okay, we are kind of selling all big customers. So they are big, like a food servicing company, and so we got one. It's about to pay us. So that's
right.
our.
So you have one. One
Yes.
does not have exponential growth. One does not
we have
necessarily
a
have
few
margin.
on the pipeline. So we have
Right.
margin. We said we have a few in the pipeline, but because we have a hardware equipment cost, so we started with just one, because it's a little bit like Amazon Go, but for the big food service things. So it's a little bit different from the other type. Yes.
Yes, but having a rhythm, by the time you get to product market fit, you should have a rhythm. And there's a
Yes.
bunch of work on sub-markets that needs to happen early on that will make
Yes.
that conversation a much shorter, more effective conversation.
Yeah, we start with one customer, figure out exactly they're willing to pay, where's exponential growth, because we're expecting exponential, like say, kind of viral growth from that company, and that's it's not a product market fit. We're thinking maybe in a year, because the product need. I feel it's needed refinement as well. That we will figure out why we working with the customers.
Sure. So that's actually a meaningful strategy. I would call it a consulting strategy. We know we want to be in this pathway. Here's a customer that wants to be in that pathway. We'll work with them and do basically time and materials work to develop that for them. But then let's find 10 people that look a lot like them and do
Yes,
the
we
consulting
already.
strategy
Yeah, we
for
are.
them, and then use that common solution to turn that
Yes.
into a product.
Yes, we have one product. We have a few customers also interested in, but because equipment cost is very high, so we concentrate with one that is fitting us most.
Yes,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming you're building some kind of CRM where you're keeping track of everybody that you're talking to. I'm assuming, as you build a thing, like I build a website and then I need to get 1,000 people to the website, which of those is easier? Building the website's much easier than getting 1,000 people to change their behavior and show up. So to get that 1,000, or better yet, 10,000 people to show up at the website, you have to do your customer development work, which is why building the CRM of all the people you want to engage in is an important thing, right? And you get their information, their contact information, and somehow you're going to record it and organize it into learning, and specifically utilize some kind of experiment report. I talked to these people, they're in this sub demographic, this is what I learned, and I'm going to run a bunch of experiments against it. This is the broader lean canvas experiment thing. So Connor, you sort of were the fast guy to raise your hand around lean canvas. Do you use the lean canvas to test your assumption?
So I raised my hand on the question of, are you like doing a lean startup essentially? Which
Did you
I did,
use the
read that book.
lean canvas?
I did not actually use the lean canvas specifically. I'm looking at it now. I fully agree with the concept of it. Yeah, good.
That I want people to take away is that customer development happens before product development. A lot of people talk about being iterative and doing MVPs and all of those other conversations. But the fundamental, and if you do that, there's a bunch of experiments we can run. And what I'm saying is close up the lean canvas to a narrow set of equations and do customer discovery to find customer problem fit early on. And then the secret is how to do that when you're firmly convinced you have the solution, but you have not got clarity on what the alternatives are. And when people say they have no alternative, they've got a problem and they don't know what to do, you may be very early in the market and there may be education needs to go through, which is a difficult place to be for startups sometimes. That's often gets you into the nonprofit land of being an educator. In any case, there's a couple of things like the validation board that allows you to manage the process of running experiments. And if you just look for lean experiment report form, there's a dozen of them out there, but you should pick one and run those experiments. For nurses, we asked them this thing, and what we learned is nurses do not have budget, for example, right? So selling to nurses is not going to work, right? Talk to doctors. Doctors also don't have budget, but they have influence over budget, that kind of conversation. Lots of things that you're going to learn about that process. So when you are interviewing these people, and when people say I'm sending surveys, then I get nervous again, because a lot of things that you can learn come from watching people fidget and be unhappy. And at the very least, you should be doing a Zoom call, if not meeting them in person. But when you're doing that, what you want to do is not ask about the solution. Will you buy my thing? Is not a question. It's not something that you ask in the first one, and it's barely a thing that you ask in the second one. And so we're staying away from the solution where we define the answer already and thereby eliminate all of the possible things we could learn about the possible problems we could solve that might be much better and much more interesting. And certainly the mom test is a reasonable pathway to do that. But the core is to talk about the problem and the needs of the customer for that problem and what they currently do about it. So what do you currently do? Why did you do that one instead of that other one? What are the things that you looked at? Why didn't you like that one? Why do you like that one? What do you wish was different? Is this one of the top 3 things that keeps you up at night? Those kinds of open questions will get you a long way. You always want to ask the question, can you show me how to do it? Or can you describe that in some detail and try to learn where they're spending their time and energy? Because presumably what you're going to do is reduce the cost, increase the speed, reduce the overhead of doing things, or perhaps totally eliminate some of the steps in the process they're involved in. And as doing that, you now become disruptive, where instead of taking 100 hours and $1,000, you're costing $100 and it's only taking 15 minutes, right? That kind of dramatic change in behavior and effort then turns into a meaningfully accessible market that is going to move relatively quickly. Again, not about the product. So how do you find that 100 people who share the same problem, collect the details, work through that, and refine that set of things, try to understand the sub markets, try to spend where they're spending the time and engagement. And then how do you create content that attracts that group of people, right? So how many people here have a content strategy? No. I'm not seeing any hands, really 0. All right.
That's why we're here, John.
All right. So I'm assuming that in the first step, you go through from the lean canvas, you build your customer database. You're going to need order thousands of people in that database. You're going to need to sub-segment them into the sub markets, build their demographic information, collect their psychographic information, run the experiments, which are in your lab notebook. And out of that, you derive this competitive matrix. And that competitive matrix is bound to the work you've been doing, which then tells you, doctors think this thing, but nurses think that thing, and dentists are over in this other corner, and you start seeing patterns to the groups. And then you want to move that into a content strategy and use that to help you answer some of the questions, like what's the cost of acquiring people in your sales funnel? You can learn that early because the first 3 steps in the sales funnel are content. Yeah. I see no sparkly eyes. So out of this, you should be getting at least to the value proposition that Jeffrey Moore suggests for this group of people who are having this particular kind of problem. Our solution type is this, or our solution called whatever is this solution type that creates this benefit, right? That's the simple pitch thing that we train people on when they're doing their pitches. You need to have this in every pitch you do. The 1-minute pitch, the 30-second elevator pitch, the 20-minute pitch. This information needs to be clear and anchored in there. Sadly, it's not sufficient. This is really what you need to have under control. And every one of these things is a set of experiments that you need to go in and understand, right? And so what kind of customer, what is the pain, where is the market size for that, right? And if it's not got $1 billion on it, then most angel investors are not interested in that market. And we can talk about that in another context about how to address that in other ways. But there's a bunch of things to drive into, and you would like to understand this. And by the way, this slide deck is under the slide share, and I'll post the slide share stuff at the end when I get a chance. And here's some resources. And specifically, this Cindy Alvarez book, or I guess that's a video, is a discussion of how to talk to people about the problem and not the solution, because that's a place where most people get stranded. Now, all of this is part of this Ashmoria Build a Happy Customer Factory. We want to produce a bunch of happy customers. Not that we want to keep our current customers happy, that's sort of a foregone thing, but we want to create more and more happy customers. And in order to do that, we're basically doing the pirate metrics thing. acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. So the first three of those, acquisition, activation, and retention, are all content. And we can move that revenue thing forward so that we're driving revenue before product. And we'll talk some more about that. So this is the do the mushroom story. So there's a guy who's a software guy, sort of tired of doing software, wants to go wandering the woods looking at mushrooms, wants to give tours of people, let's go look at mushrooms. So he starts trying to do that by going to bars, inviting people to come, has a Facebook strategy. What he is keenly aware of is that as you do content, you need to track your results. And so every time he makes an offer, he tracks who comes and he tracks how many come and whether that channel produced people coming in, and he's getting better and better at that. And then COVID comes along. And so he starts doing Zoom meetings. He starts doing free Zoom meetings, and then he starts doing paid Zoom meetings, and he starts doing in-person meetings that are paid. And he builds this little stair step of finding people that are interested, finding people who are on different channels that are active, talking about mushrooms, and then he starts attracting people into more nuanced and detailed conversations to the point where they're now paying him to engage in that conversation about mushrooms. And on a semi-regular basis now, he's making 10K a month in mushroom stories. That anything click for you on that? So I see men confused about what I just said. So what I'm hoping you understand is this is a content strategy, and that content strategy can be monetized before you have the product. So are there people that have a problem? Yes. Do you know the sub-market? Yes. I can run an experiment where I offer a free Zoom meeting and see who shows up. So I offer 100 people, hey, there's this meeting about this problem. And then you see how many people show up to the meeting. And you can start measuring that. You can start saying things that will bring people in. And at that meeting, you then say, thanks for coming. If you would like to dive into this deeper, here's this workshop we're doing. It's $25 to attend that workshop. It's another Zoom meeting, right? So how long would it take you to do that? Put up an Eventbrite page or a meetup page. Sign up for Zoom so that you can keep longer than a 45-minute meeting, and take tickets, right? Meetup will charge, Eventbrite would charge. You can even do Facebook payments or LinkedIn payments. There's ways to charge directly on whatever channel, right? And so you can collect the $25 from 25 people pretty easily. And if you can say something useful and then people with that problem show up in the room and you have a useful conversation there, now you can measure the interested people from the activated people, because the people that paid you $25 are the activated people. And if you do this well, you can make enough money to pay for your marketing person. So you have a full-time marketing person producing content simply by monetizing the content. I'm not getting the response that I'm expecting. Is this obvious to everyone? Neeti, do you see how being a stealth startup might be difficult to execute this plan?
I see that. I'm actually working alongside Connor, so
Yeah, I think the thing is basically that there's like, I think so. One thing to keep in mind, like, there's different reasons to be in stealth, obviously, right? So it's just, there's different aspects of stealth versus, I'm not gonna try and bridge that gap, but that's okay. I think this is all super useful in terms of like trying to, I think when there's more of a services business, right? Like, I think that's like the example, the mushroom story is very like services oriented, and kind of getting started and going down that path totally makes sense.
I think it works for any business where people are clear on the problem and they have self agency to do something about the problem. If you're in a large enterprise and the person with the problem, like nurses have the problem, but the guy that has the money in the accounting department is the guy that has to move, and the distance between those two is too great, and they never get the nurses' problem solved with hospital budget, right? Not until the nurses are quitting, kind of thing, right? It has to become crisis before it moves the budget. So there's certain kinds of businesses it gets harder with, but I would argue that a hardware business or a B2B business has the same thing where you have problems, right? You had your hand up earlier. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Rajani.
Yes.
So I, as you know, I have a streaming platform, right? The content community. So if you're talking about the monetizing the content strategy, like how you're describing, how would that be in my case? Like, because I've been meeting with filmmakers and with content creators, arranging a Zoom meeting for free. And just kind of, and on the process of that, it's kind of a customer discovery and just doing research as well with them, asking them questions.
But doing it for free doesn't clarify if they're customers at all. And there are 98% of the people that you talk to for free are not customers, at least not in the next 6 months. And you need the concentration of people that will pay you this 6 months.
Right.
So when you pay attention to the thousands of people who are not customers, then you distract yourself from the urgency of getting the core group of people. But who do you think your customer is? What's an example of a customer?
Yeah, both the subscribers, the viewers, audience, and then also the filmmakers. We added another revenue stream.
What's the problem that the filmmakers have?
They don't have enough platform to showcase their work, to feature their work, to monetize their work. So they're not given enough opportunity to reach their audience and grow their audience and sustain their career. So that's just the main problem in the filmmaking community. For the subscriber side of things, is just not a lot of people can't find interesting content to watch. They have like constantly looking for new stuff to interesting movies, interesting shows to watch, and Netflix and everything is just kind of like getting they're getting tired of that stuff. So I mean that's just solving the both problem at the same time. But in terms of meeting with
so for me, when I hear that, I hear a top-down belief. And what I would like you to do is to give me evidence. So what's the evidence that you have an audience of subscribers that want, and I'll use the word avant-garde content, and are bored with the mainstream platforms? Because there's no shortage of platforms, right? So what's the evidence you have that that's important to them?
Well, I constantly, till today, starting from the day that we launched the platform, I keep getting a screenshot of people sending me that, hey, Rajani, did you know that this is I saw this on Twitter and I want you to see this. And it's basically people asking for new platform. They're just asking for, I'm tired of Netflix. Is there any other thing that I can subscribe to? Is there any other place that we can look for content? And that's just been coming through here and there, like every week, like every.
So how do you turn that into a sale?
What do you mean?
Well, someone says "Bleh" on Twitter, and you say something back to them on Twitter, and they go, oh, "Thank you."
They actually come. They actually click on in front of Facebook.
Do they pay?
Well, they did. A couple of them. So 30% of the people that we sent out to actually click and then pay to subscribe, either subscribe or pay for
of the people that complain on Twitter that they can't find anything good and they want a new platform, then 30% of them turn into paid customers.
Yes, not just the Twitter, like the people that complaining that I have received, and I get a chance to send them.
That's like automatable, right? You can do your little searches on Twitter, and then when they say that, you can say, by the way, here's this thing, and let the robot do it, and then you should have this nice little pump if 10 people are doing it a day.
Are you talking about the AI?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's just
all of that action is automatable, right?
I'm excited.
Okay, so that's what Thorsten was going to talk about, and he's going to do that in January, sadly, because he's sick tonight. And so that's evidence that is measured that there's people blathering on a channel And then that blather turns into sales because there's a set of steps. Now show me the evidence on the other side.
Well, I am one of the other side.
No, that doesn't count. I have a
But
personal script pitch is called a hobby. What's the evidence that you have 10 filmmakers that are like, oh my God, I have to have a new place to put stuff?
I said that I have a meeting. I set up meeting with like the past in November. I set up like I reached out to 50 filmmakers to put the content on the platform. And if they have any questions about the platform, they can set up the meeting with me. And 30% of them set up the meeting to talk to me about the platform.
So
And
offer to 50 to come do it.
yeah,
So 30 out of 50 set up the
Yes.
meeting. How
Yes.
many people are paying you?
maybe like 10% of that.
So 3.
Actually, yeah, 3. I think 3 or 5 people.
And over
It's
what
not-
time period?
Well, they are actually, they refer other people also to pay to come to the platform, and then
Over
they
what
pay
time
for it.
period?
That's like a month, within like maybe
Okay,
three
so if you're doing that
weeks.
every month,
Mhm,
then the goal is to get to exponentiality.
mm,
So why do we want exponentiality? We want exponentiality because, well, let me go back.
Like a snowball effect, is what you're trying to
No,
get to.
so this is a population.
Mhm,
Populations adopt new things following this normal curve. There's the crazy innovators that
mhm,
can't do anything with. There's these early adopters. And then when you get into the flow, the sum of that group is exponential. So the first half of the normal curve, the sum of that looks like an exponential curve. So we should
Mhm.
see when an audience says, that's a behavior I'm going to change, then that audience changing its behavior looks exponential.
mm,
And so that looks like 1 or 3 to 5% week over week growth in revenue, or it looks like 25 to 30% month over month growth in revenue. And let me urge you to try week over week with a 4-week rolling average instead of month over month, because you'll take a lot of the noise out of the system. But because it follows this normal curve, then when you've hit a market that is now paying attention, you should get exponentiality for the first half of it. Right. And then presumably we get big enough that we've sold or exited or otherwise gone public by the time we get to big, because we got a big market that's gone somewhere. And now
What-
all the financial people come in.
Quick question, what's the time frame are you like referring to? Like, what are you suggesting
Well,
time frame of this?
You would like to get across this chasm somewhere during your Series A,
Okay.
right? And so product market fit is when I get people in the early majority paying attention to me in some way. So the late early adopters are starting to say things that the early majority are starting to listen to.
Okay.
So I think you can run content about that directly. I think an example of content that I think we've talked about before is running a startup weekend, where the startup weekend is about building content, and just start producing the Perils of Pauline shorts, where you're doing something and you gather thousands of people paying attention to that process as a way of getting them to pay attention to your platform. I think there's lots of content strategy that would do that, that would translate to people doing things. But so the message from the mushroom story in my mind is monetize your content, and you should have content about your process. Specifically, if you're an expert in what you are building a product for, that expertise is something you can talk about. If nothing else, you can go interview all the people that use all the existing alternatives and have them explain why it doesn't work. Right? So lots of opportunity there. And Zoom meetings are relatively cheap ways to get thousands of people through a program without having to do too much. But you could go to do booths at conferences, or you could be a speaker at conferences, or you can write newspaper articles. I mean, there's lots of content opportunities where the end result of that is someone signing up to get a thing, where that thing is education or information, not the product. So then, Tom's Hardware. Anybody bought a new phone recently? No. All right. So you buy a new phone, you go to Google and you say, how is a Pixel 5a different than a Samsung 22, whatever, right? And up comes Tom's Hardware, and it does a comparison between the two phones, and it does a detailed analysis of the two phones, and it says, when you do this, this one is the better one. When you do that, this one's the better one. And down at the bottom, it has click here to buy from Amazon for each of them. So regardless of which analysis you fell on, they make a sale. So they're basically monetizing through affiliate sales, their competitive matrix. So you have a competitive matrix, go find things that are representative of the different competitive matrix, see which one they buy. Do they buy the give me more information button, or do they say that solves my problem and they buy a specific thing, or do they buy the other one? And so now you can do the measurement of your competitive matrix. All of the alternatives of what people possibly could do, including here's a workshop for pay on how to implement this strategy. And so you can put your own thing into that content straight. So it's just an exponential map of XYZ feature of alternative A versus alternative B, alternative A versus C, alternative B versus C, B versus D. And you take the dozen or so alternatives that they have, including doing nothing, and compare them. And then that gives you hundreds of web pages with hundreds of places where people can click. And now you have a way of measuring their engagement and interest. And hopefully you took information about who they were at the beginning so that as they go through, you can see which direction people are going in terms of their interests and use that to learn more about the customer base and get to the sub market segmenting of that process. So if you look for Tom's Guide or you look for Tom's Hardware, you'll see a website full of alternatives of comparing this tech widget to that tech widget, which can be monetized. So you can monetize your content. You can monetize your competitive matrix. Yes? All right. So then the education app story. We have a 13-year-old girl. She's using her phone and doing an app on the phone. Who's the customer? Is it the girl? Is it the parents? Is it the grandparents? Is it the teacher? Is it the principal? Is it the education department at the school? Is it the district education department? Is it the state department of education? Is it the federal department of education? Is it the nonprofit that wants 13-year-old girls to do STEM stuff? There's about 13 different markets, sub-markets inside there. And for every one of them, their problem is different. Their sales cycle is different. Their price that they're willing to pay is different. And so you need to run a lean experiment against each one to figure out which one is the fastest to cash flow positive, which one is the best margin that you can get, and which one is the largest and that you can afford to do. Maybe the big one is the one that takes more time to get to it. And so you don't start that one early. You start the one that you can get cash flow positive fastest. So you have a stable place to be. And then you find ways to increase your margin. And then you use that margin to find ways to grow bigger. And now that you've grown bigger and hired a bunch of people, you're not cash flow positive like you thought you were. And now you go back to going as fast as you can to be cash flow positive. So clarity on who the customer is can transform your business. And when you have a handful of people as customers who are paying you, it's not enough to see the submarkets. And so you need to get enough people so you can see the submarkets. Now I know in enterprise sales where the total market size is 100 companies, this is a relatively difficult thing to do. But there's 127,000 companies in King County. So when people are selling B2B, they're mostly selling to not enterprise. They're mostly selling to smaller businesses, and there's at least tens of thousands of those in every metropolitan area. So having more than 100 that you run some kind of engagement with is probably worthwhile for you to understand whether you should have this kind of business or that kind of business as your main target if you're doing B2B. And the same thing with B2C. Doing all doctors is a very difficult thing. There's very specific subgroups that will activate quickly, and you would like to get narrow on that sub market where you can. And you can do that by thinking out the equivalent of the education app stories. Who are all of the possible customers? And then go find 10 of them and run an experiment. Go find 10 of the other one, run an experiment, and drive those very quickly. Some of those will drop it to zero and they're totally not interesting. You get very negative results from people. They're not willing to come to the info sessions. They're not willing to buy at all. And you run that a couple of times and done, right? So what will that take you? That'll take you maybe, I don't know. Once you get the names of the people, it's going to take you about 15 minutes to discover that nobody signed up for anything. Then the answer becomes no. All right. So that's the end of what I have in this set of things. I can do other things if people want. Is this helpful at all?
Yes, this is helpful. It's very interesting, and I think I am learning. I will definitely go over the recording to dive even deeper.
I'm hoping that people get that monetizing your content strategy has a lot of value for you. Would also like to say that early adopters are often urgently in need of having the solution quickly, and therefore they're often willing to pay more than people later on in the sales process. So it may be counterproductive to you to be offering for free your services when you could charge not only a price, but a high price for doing it. And maybe that high price might even be time and materials kind of prices for the pre-alpha customer, and then work that down into a post-beta customer later at a retail price, right? And so maybe you're charging 10 times the retail price, or maybe even 100 times the retail price in the beginning to filter out all of the people that are interested but not customers yet. And you find the people that have an existential reason where if they don't do this, they are going to die, kinds of things. And they're willing to suffer through all kinds of things that the retail customer won't tolerate, right? So the retail customer wants things polished. They want the manual. They want everything to work. They don't want to have any questions. They just want it to work. They don't want it changing underneath them, where the early adopter is like, any piece of anything that stops the bleeding is a win. And so you might start there with paying customers trying to move that forward. So I guarantee for every idea you have, if there's a market for your idea, there's one company somewhere in the world or one person in the world that will pay you time and materials to build it for them as a one-off. Now, out of 8 billion people, they're relatively hard to find. And so I also think that there's a group of 10 people that will pay you 1/10 of time and materials. And I also think there's a group of 100 people that will pay you 1/100th time and materials. And by the time you get to retail, you're at 1,000th of time and materials, and that's your retail price. And that works for many, as a rule of thumb, that works for many SaaS-oriented companies. May or may not work for companies that have large hardware costs. So if we had enough to fill your brains and we understand where we're at, and then we'll have Thorsten come in January and tell us the story of how to do the AI automation of this set of stories.
I'd be a bit curious if we have time still to kind of like continue the mushroom story, right? And how does that get to scale like a satisfying sort of result? You know, where do you foresee that? Like, do you see it as you just from the workshops, you see things that eventually become, you know, technology problems that get bigger solutions? Or I'm curious how you view that.
You have a curated audience that's leaning in. So now that you have a curated audience that's leaning in, you have the opportunity to know a lot of things about them. You know their demographics. You can interview them for their psychographics. You can interview them for the things around them that they're having trouble with. You can interview them for why they're interested in mushrooms in the first place. Maybe what they really want is algae, not mushrooms, but they just don't know it, right? Maybe what they want is psychedelics, and they'll take any kind of, fun thing or microdosing thing. And, there's a lot of different things that are covered by mushrooms, right? Mushrooms. I learned today from somebody who sells algae mouth mints that they use mushrooms to clean the teeth of horses. Who knew? In any case, you have a group of people that are curated to interview, and you can learn a lot about the submarkets very clearly, and you can find a problem to solve that's a nuanced problem that you can then find the size of the market in that is quickly addressable. And I would take that opportunity and take the money and, ratchet up a level.
Got it. Any suggestions? Imagine that somebody did sort of something similar and got to that sub segment and is now looking to market that through content, right? Is the idea sort of still doing the mushroom story, or
I understand the customer, right? I have gesture turned on. Isn't that interesting? This is something that I just learned that I have. Stop the gesture and then it goes away. And then
I've never seen it before.
Yeah. I'm not sure how long it takes for it to decide that that's a good thing, but there it is again. All right. That's what happens when you buy new computers and they have new software on it that you don't know what all the things are. I have an audience. I'm clear on the message that audience needs to hear because I've got enough of them that have responded. I'm keeping track of my cost of customer acquisition. I'm keeping track of the language I'm using down the channels, and I run my experiments down the channels. So I know which channel, I know what my cost is of that channel. I know what the content keywords are. And now I just need to build a heartbeat on that, right? And so then we're into regular old content management, right? How do I find people? How do I attract them into engaging? And usually the answer is not to sell them. The answer is to create value, and then every now and then tell them about your opportunity to buy something. And so where you can create free content that attracts them because they need to understand, because the offering that's available in the market is something that they're not clear on, where you can give them workshops about how to use the whatever. Like, for example, we tried to do a workshop with Pictory.ai, which is a video editing tool that came through the Seattle Angel Conference. And you run a program that says, this is how you do content utilizing this tool. And then some people go and buy the tool, and then some people want to take the class about how to be efficient with the tool. And so there's a whole offering of materials that are content materials that are for sale by the company to support the process of being efficient with that tool. So I use Canva, or I use HubSpot, or I use Zapier. All of them have little weirdnesses that I always get myself stuck on, and I never do it frequently enough that I can remember all the weirdnesses. And so then I go and I pay for a class for me to learn it a little bit. And I definitely spend time on the channel where they're providing the free video shorts that answer all the questions that I care about, right? So there's a content strategy that's monetizable for the duration of the product that way, right? But then again, that collection of value, what are the 100 problems that people have where your tool is the proper answer for that? And then here's how you solve this thing with this tool. Here's how you solve this other thing with this tool. This is why you should not use this tool for this problem, but go use this other tool, right? All of those are useful ways of getting people into the sales funnel, right? So I did another talk, which was the Lean Angel talk. And I guess I'll leave that for another day. But I will put the thing into the chat. Where's my chat? So this is the Lean Angel one, and it goes into a little more detail of a few more things. And this is the slide deck. This won't work. And here is the slide deck for today. So in the other one, we dived into some detail about how the sales funnel works and building that sales funnel and what you're trying to do with the sales funnel. So do you, Connor, currently have a sales funnel?
Not quite in the sense that you mean it, I don't think, right? It's not quite there. And that's sort of what we're behind, I'd say, on that. I think we did things a little differently. And now we're looking to catch up on some of that.
And so I refer back to a talk by Dave Kluwer from 500 Startups, where he talked about pirate metrics. So acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue. That's the thing that Ash Moria talks about in the Happy Customer Factory. And so basically you're trying to manage this, right? I have a whole bunch of different channels I could be using, and I want to say things on those channels and wiggle the sign on the street corner. And then people come to a thing and I acquire their attention, and then I get them to lean in. And what I'm suggesting is that lean in is more than signing up for my platform. It's like paying me to sign up for that platform. So when we did that picture of the guy with the $5 bill, we were at a startup weekend. He was on my team, and our offer was sign up for our newsletter and pay us $5. And so you can sell the access to information as a way of measuring people who care compared to the people who would sign up for the newsletter without paying. Those are two different levels of value of the list. So you would like to charge the $1 or charge the $5 or $10 or whatever, and validate that they're willing to open their checkbook to lean in on the process in some way. And then you can work on the referral loop and the retention loop and the revenue loop. And again, acquisition, activation, and retention is all content. And then sharing the content to other is referral. So you can argue that some part of that fourth step is also a content strategy. And this is true whether I'm pre-product or post-product. I need to have this built. And specifically what I'm trying to do when I do that is I'm trying to measure the conversion rate as I move step by step through the sales funnel. So it doesn't help me to tell me that the number of people that are paying members of my thing are X if I can't compare how many people I had to talk to get the new ones this month. Because if I have to talk to 10,000 to get the one, my cost of acquisition is way too high. Any other thoughts or questions?
Not at this time.
Carolyn? Matthew? No? Well, all right. I'm happy to discuss this. We talk about it on Open Coffee every Tuesday morning and dive into examples with people real time. We will take the idea of this and turn it into automations with Thorsten over a series of a few workshops with him, and he's going to pick up the conversation in January. And I'm currently working on laying out the workshops for January and February. So stay tuned to the group. If there's questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for having it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Thank you.